You're now listening to the Something Good Podcast Network. Please press any key to continue.
A kiss, as defined by Dan Webster, is something pleasing, a caress, a gentle touch. But there's another kiss that isn't in Webster's.
Hey world, we're kids!
Some critics say they don't make music, they just make noise.
Yeah, Kiss sucks!
Kiss implies the extreme in the theatrics on stage, utilizing fire and smoke and bizarre costumes, and the ever-consistent, constant concealment of their true identities.
Speaking of which, Kiss is going to have its own comic book soon.
Take Kiss with you. It's fun. Show your friends and be the first. Now.
Oh my God, no time to turn!
Welcome once again to No Time to Turn, a Kiss nerd podcast.
Nerds.
Ooh, ooh. So we are rolling into
Trying
these.
something new every week. It's better than your nerd alert.
If you're listening the first time, you're like, God damn, they're right.
Yes.
I don't know how big of Kiss nerds they are, but they're definitely nerds. We're reaching the tail end of our of our
solo albums.
I've already fucked this whole episode up.
We can't make any sort of joke. We can't say anything without giggling about this Paul episode. We started the last episode with it. Now we're keeping it going.
Okay. All right. Here we are. We are at the end of the exploration of the solo albums.
Yes.
And this is the Paul Stanley episode, and I'm sure this is we're gonna do our best here.
And if this is the first episode in this series you're listening to, go back and listen to the other three before this.
This is episode D.
Yes.
A, B, C, D. Mm-hmm. And this is the Paul Stanley solo album. Let's see. What have I got here? Most of this, from what I understand, was recorded at Electric Lady Studio in February of 1978. Yep. And this is important to the timeline, to their story, that the narrative they've always put forth is the solos were born out of disharmony within the group that really came to a head during the filming of Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park. However, Kiss Meets the Phantom of the Park was not being filmed until May of 78. So Paul's already in the studio working on this project, and we've already said this was already a contractually mandated thing. So their narrative, I'm sure all of that came into play as far as like the disharmony and the eagerness to go and do these other albums, but it was all on the table. It was all open and ready for them to go do.
Now, one question I do have, though, which is, I wonder if it's just the way it's been archived and listed and talked about. All of these songs, of course, came from their own personal demos. And when they discuss the whole narrative of doing solo albums during the recording or filming rather of Kiss Meets the Phantom, it's more often than not I hear that Ace is the one really pushing, going, I want to do solo material, and then Bill Aucoin, quote unquote, has the idea, why don't we all do solo albums? Yeah, but even though it's saying stuff like recorded February to July of 78 for instance, Paul, I know that a lot of his material was polished up demos. Would they be possibly referencing the demo stages that they would usually be in anyway?
Well, that's what, from what I've gathered on the research that I've gotten, is that most of this Electric Lady stuff was done pretty quick. Mm-hmm. They were, I think, live in the studio essentially. Yeah. And so that's why it lends credence to the idea that these were initially going to be demos. Right. And it seemed like I read somewhere where he even said, no, this is a demo. And it was like very polished for a demo. And the guy was like, wow, that's better than most, he's like, that could be an album track. Yeah. One of the guys that played on it seems like, real fast, Cap, look up and see if you can find the info when Ace's album was recorded. I don't remember if we addressed that on the Ace record now or not, but
that was recorded June to July of 78.
Okay, so that makes
put her on the draw, motherfucker. When you get asked a question, you start frowning and like hunching your shoulders and like typing away like a madman.
Well, I'm just saying, we know that maybe when Paul was in the studio in February 78, maybe he wasn't intending this to be his solo album stuff. Maybe he was just making demos.
Maybe.
Because Paul's album feels very rushed to me. And I think there's some reasons why, which we'll get into. But I know when he finally, they're going to make this, and his first choice for producer is Ron Nevison, and he's unable to get Ron Nevison, and somehow he gets Jeff Glicksman.
And what is he? Who is he normally associated with?
The first band I can think of off the top of my head is Kansas.
Okay,
which is kind of a bizarre pairing there, and it doesn't work out. So Glicksman gets a co-production credit on this, but I think most of this is really, Paul. I think
there's a few co-writes on this too, with a guy named Michael Japp.
Michael Japp, who I meant to look that up last night. You'll tell me because I know the answer to this.
Album work featuring Michael Japp, New Nation. The Babies.
The Babies.
Yes, the Babies. He also worked on Killers and Creatures of the Night.
Well, that's the reason why Paul wanted Ron Nevison, was because of Nevison's work with the Babies.
I found a Babies record the other day, oddly enough.
Which one?
I forget what it was. It's like what it's called, but it's like a hand reaching out and on the top, and then at the bottom it's like a foot with a high heel shoe on it, kind of raising up from the bottom.
That's oh God, my memory.
The Baby's knowledge is just not.
There's a song on that.
Duh Baby.
Yeah, Duh Baby.
There's a song on that is killer. It's like almost like a ballad. I think it's called "You've Got It." It's so good.
I'll have to check out the Babies.
Such a great song.
I will say I find it interesting that on Paul's record, basically side A and side B are separate musicians.
Yeah,
for the most part.
Yeah, and half of it was recorded in New York and half of it in L.A. And I think and half of it is the Jeff Glicksman stuff and half of it's his stuff. But going back to the Babies, tying this Kiss thing together, we made this little trivial connection about a guy named. God damn it!
Now it's gone.
Jesus Christ.
Names, information.
Why am I having these moments, man?
One connection that I found too is that Mike D. Stone at the record plant was one of the mixers on this album, and he was also associated with the Peter Criss album as well. So I thought that was interesting. But yeah, a lot of the songs, like say the Electric Lady demos, wound up being the album tracks on top with some other bells and whistles on top. Am I correct?
That's what I've been leading to believe, because I was kind of going back in my memory banks, and I remember hearing a version of Wouldn't You Like to Know Me? That was a demo version that had very similar drums. It was the same drum track. It was maybe an older Paul vocal track, but it's you could hear that they only added a couple little extra things later on and polished it up.
Well, the connection with the Babies was Michael Japp, and then a guy named Ray Kennedy wrote the song "Isn't It Time?" And Ray Kennedy was in Phantom of the Paradise. Well, he wasn't in Phantom of the Paradise, but we were talking about Art Munson being on the Peter solo album, and he was in Phantom of the Paradise and played the song that Ray Kennedy voiced.
Okay.
It's just weird little trivial things that how these things sort of snake together in their weird back ways.
It is, and I wonder if that was part of Delaney, Bogart, someone at Casablanca, someone in the wings kind of helping them get these session musicians together and just being well, we've got a handful here. You go to this project, you go to that project.
I don't think so. I think particularly with Paul, he's a lot more hands-on, I think. More, after we said Aces is probably the closest true solo album because he plays most of it himself.
Yeah.
I think Paul's is very close second because I think Paul's is the most hands-on. Like we talked about with Gene's album, it felt more like Sean Delaney was really in control.
Right.
But here Paul's clearly in control.
Oh yeah.
He has very
Paul's
definite
always in control.
Well, and he has because he's got very clear and definite ideas of what he wants to do. He sees the destination and he knows what it takes to get there. You can say whatever you want to say about
out of him.
Absolutely. This guy has drive, he has ambition, and he knows and he's a great fucking songwriter.
Yep.
As this record proves.
And that's the reason why, actually, to get ahead of it, this is my favorite of the four. And it's because of everything you just said there. It's the reason why Aces kind of fell out of favor a little bit for me, is Ace is that great guitar record. And I feel that this is a good songwriter record. This record is full of hooks, catchy riffs. Right. You find yourself humming along to solos. To me, this is a well-crafted solo record.
It is, but to another end, this is also a great guitar record.
Yep. Oh, it definitely is.
I mean, the guitar tone on this is fucking killer.
And I will say, this record was ground zero for me as inspiration for the last full LP our band, the Fill-Ins, did. Never heard of them. That guitar tone, everything. There's a song we have called Dramatic. And that fuzzy little guitar kind of sound that he has on like a Wouldn't You Like to Know Me?
It ain't little. It's huge.
Well, I mean, no, like in Wouldn't You Like to Know Me?
Right.
You know how it kind of sounds a little small during the intro and then it I lifted that exact same kind of thought process of started with kind of the scratchy small guitar and then bring it all up. It's like I love the production of this record.
Well, let's dive in. We'll start side one, song one. Tonight You Belong to Me.
It's a cool little. It's a great lead song for this album too.
It harkens back a little bit to
I Want You.
Well, it's got the almost kind of false start where he does the acoustic, kind of lush thing.
Yes.
And then it goes straight into the
badass
hard
riff.
guitar.
Now, I will say something that I don't really hear people talk about. When that song kicks in with the dun dun dun, the guitar riff is playing the main ba-na-na-na-na. But if you listen carefully, there's a keyboard or an organ in the background holding one note. It is so cool.
That's not what it is. I've got that in here in my notes.
Okay.
I did some research on this.
Is that the EBO thing?
That's what I'm looking at too.
I was looking that up and I looked it up and I was like trying to mentally place where that would be in a song.
That, we talked about that with the Love Gun demo. Yeah, that's the first place I now can hear where it popped up.
Okay.
Like in the demo for Love Gun, it's there.
Yeah.
It's that drone note. Yeah. And I didn't know what it was until, I did the research on this.
Yeah.
And it's, it's an interesting, he uses this a lot on this record. And, there's a lot of little flourishes on this that, and until you really, if you're listening close, you probably don't really notice or think about it. Like, he's got kind of a choral part on the end of this track. Mm-hmm. It's just him overdubbing himself.
Yeah.
And it's like it's there, but it's almost in line with what he's doing with, I guess, the EBO.
Mm-hmm. Right.
So it's almost like, like you said, it sounds like almost like a keyboard part or something.
Yeah, it did. That's what I thought it was for so long.
That you never really notice. It doesn't come conscious, and the guitar is over the top of it in such a way that's more pronounced. And it's really clever the way it's all arranged and put together.
I think so. I love it.
This song is just a great song. I mean,
it's a great love song.
This is I'm surprised this doesn't have stronger legs that it would have bled over into a Kiss set, as opposed
I feel
to
that way about a lot of the songs in this album.
Huh?
I feel that way about a lot of the songs in this album.
Yeah, I think some of these songs though, I don't think Kiss would have handled well.
You don't think so?
I mean, I think it's got Paul's signature, and as such, it could have been. But I think in their hands, it wouldn't have had the same. It just wouldn't have had the same effect.
I think that's very true, especially because moving on to the next song. This is the song, which is "Move On," that they did put in the Dynasty set. And they did not play it as well as the studio version. Yeah. And I think, unfortunately, it comes down to Peter and his frantic playing during that Dynasty tour just didn't serve it as well as...
Yeah, it doesn't, which is weird because this leans hard into the R&B area that he does so well and that Paul does so well.
Mm-hmm. It just didn't hit live.
It's got, more EBO stuff in it.
Yeah.
And it's got those breakdown parts, which apparently I think I found out Paul claims that he was inspired by Bad Company for this. And when I read that, I was like, this is Good Lovin' Gone Bad. Not directly, but that same kind of there's a part in Good Lovin' Gone Bad where it breaks down and he does kind of the soft vocal,
with like the bass lines,
and then it snaps back into the hard part.
Yeah.
And that's what he's following that paradigm. He's not It's
Yeah.
not Good Lovin' Gone Bad, but it's the same paradigm. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
He was a big Free and Paul Rogers fan anyway.
Yeah, he was huge into that. So
Another little production note I like is after the solo, when he gets back to that breakdown, the ties he's the kind of thing. There's now a piano in the background. You hear like two notes, like a little doom doom kind of thing. It's the only time you really hear it, but there's one extra little something in that breakdown.
See, but I don't think there's any keys on this. I don't recall reading. Look and see if you can find. Is there a
Pianos on the album?
Wait, actually, I take that back. I think maybe there is. There was a.
Well, I mean, "Hold Me, Touch Me" starts out all piano.
Oh yeah.
That's the only piano credit that's on the.
Yeah. See, I'm having senior moments all over the place here.
But yeah, so I just thought that was one. I always like when bands do that. They add like one little thing to change up a verse or a chorus that they don't do.
It's so subtle that you almost don't even notice it.
Mm-hmm. But it keeps your attention anyway. You don't know why it keeps your attention until we break it down like we do because we're nerds.
And
the guitar solos.
Oh yeah. Well, some of these solos are Paul.
Oh yeah.
Yep.
And I don't think I think like Bob Kulick was quite content to go through life claiming ownership of all of this.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of this is Paul.
I think this one's Bob because of
Possibly.
how fast, like that.
Well, I'll tell you, going back to, is it at the, you know what? It's at the end of Tonight You Belong to Me, I think, where there's a bum note. Mm-hmm. And they left it.
Yeah, I know what you're talking
solos.
about. I think that's a Paul move on that one.
But I mean, it didn't need to stay there, but they left it because it was like the rest of it was good. Let's just, they didn't even bother to punch in just a single note to fix it. It's there. It's just like that.
It's like the finger slipped just a
honks.
little.
Yeah. Yep. This has the backing vocals, though, Move On of Desmond Child's
Rouge Girls.
Rouge. Mm-hmm. And I accidentally was trying to claim that on the
Gene record. Yeah.
But no, it's here. So yeah, Paul has now made the connection with Desmond Child, and I want to say he was wanting to produce them or did.
I think he produced one of the or helped co-write some songs with Desmond at the very least.
And of course, that kick-started Desmond Child's career as a songwriter.
Yep. And like
for good or for not.
Yeah.
That there's
say what you want about the Bon Jovi songs.
Say what you want about any of his stuff, but he's been that guy's
at least
successful.
20 of his songs.
Yeah.
But no, I love this song. I think it's great. Sassy Paul vocal.
Yeah, I've always loved this. I like the breakdown parts.
I like the lyrics too. Like
it
starts out, "When I was just a baby, mama sat me on her knee."
I mean, that's old. I mean, that goes back.
That's soul stuff.
Yeah,
right
that's
there.
old blues lines. I mean, that's been used in 1,000 songs. So
I
what?
know.
It's still cool. It works.
I know. I love it.
I dig this track a lot too. I used to not like it as much, but it's grown on me within the last couple of years.
I've always really liked it.
Also love the big rock star outro it's got because it has a little a skip breaks the It's
How's that?
It's almost
guitar.
But the thing is, it's almost kind of big band,
right?
Like with the way the rhythm guitars are always kind of working.
Thing. He's always done that R&B thing, and a lot of times some of it, I think his guitar parts are mimic horn parts and such. Again with the use of the EBow.
I kind of want to get one of those now. Now I know what it is.
Yeah.
Fuck around with it.
Then it goes into Ain't Quite Right. Mm-hmm. I've got written here, very urban, New York City at night kind of vibe.
Yes, especially that intro.
This was always one of the ones that I would skip on this record, but kind of going through these solo albums and having that New York context kind of adds to this song for me now.
I think Peter does this vibe better than Paul.
I'd agree with that.
But then again, I've written here, maybe Paul lives in a different New York City than Peter does.
I'd agree with that too.
Yeah. You know what I mean?
Oh, yeah.
It's got the thing, but I could almost hear sax on this.
Oh, totally, dude. Absolutely.
And I think, I wrote, does Paul play lead on this? I think Paul plays lead on a lot of this. I think there's more Paul leads on here than we know.
So,
But
I'm inclined to want to agree, but at the same time, I have to look at like other things that we know Paul has done solos on. Mm-hmm. He's a very harmonic soloist. Mm-hmm. So think about it's in the future even, but like Sure Know Something. Mm-hmm. But then we can even bring it back to I Stole Your Love. Mm-hmm. It's very do 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 bum 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 bum. He doesn't do a lot of fast movement with his solos.
But I can hear that. That's why I can hear that on this and on some of his other stuff. I have a particular Paul solo that is my favorite, which we'll get to in a future episode.
Okay, right. But his but my point is that he has a feel and a style that you don't immediately call to mind because it's so seldomly ever used. Yeah. But
after a while of listening to some of that stuff, you start picking up, I think that's probably him.
See, I'm still in the camp of I think Ain't Quite Right as Bob, but then something like Take Me Away is 100% Paul. I think that's a Paul solo.
We'll get to that.
Yeah. But Ain't Quite Right is a great song. I like that a lot.
I think it's got, like I said, it's kind of got that urban New York City thing, but I think Peter would have been better. I mean, had they brought that to the Kiss and given it to Peter,
I think he would have had some fun with that.
That's an interesting what if this had been a Peter song.
Yeah.
Sounds like
Which, of course, Paul would never have done. Because Peter would have fucking nailed that shit out into a fucking
because it's totally
stratosphere,
up his alley potentially.
It's up his alley. God, that would have been cool to hear him.
I know that. I just now thinking about that, I started. Yeah, I like that a lot.
Wouldn't You Like to Know Me?
My favorite song on the record, and probably in my top 3 favorite Paul songs of all time. I adore this song.
I've written this would have benefited Kiss, and Kiss would have benefited this.
I think so.
I think Ace would have just chewed this one up.
I mean, that's kind of like what Bob does is kind of an Ace move too. That
I don't think it's near as good as what I think Ace could have done with it. And Bob Kulick's always talking about Ace would come in and be like, "How things going?" And he'd be like, "Oh, it's the best you ever played." And it's like, man, you know what? I mean, rest in peace, Bob. Whatever, but fuck you, man. Because I think it's just some things. No, but for real, there's things that obviously Bob Kulick could probably do better than Ace, whatever. But no, I think this song could have been a Kiss song, and it would have been a different song in many ways. But I think it could have been a better song, and I really think this would have given a position. Whereas Ain't Quite Right would have benefited with Peter's vocal. This would have been benefited by Ace's lead on this.
I'll give you that. I guess it's just so hard because I think there's nothing about this song I don't like.
Yeah, I love this song.
And I think that's what's made it
as it exists. It's great.
That's what's making me have to pause and have to reconsider it because again, if I could just select any song that's perfection from Paul, I would be this one. So having to break that thought for a second and go, "Well, put Ace in it." It's
it might be perfection, but I think with Ace it'd have been Perfectioner.
Yeah, and having to sit here and think on it some, I would agree with you. I do like that.
I love the 12-string bits that are on it too.
Is it a 12-string or an acoustic?
I think it's both.
Because during the verses, I'll argue that's an acoustic.
Yeah, there's an acoustic, but I'm sure there's picky parts, especially when it breaks down.
The descending.
Dun, 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 dun,
I think that's Paul's just. I think that's his tone.
It's just a big sound.
That's that jangle tone he uses.
Even when the bass and the other guitar comes out and
so
plays
that's
that
part.
I mean, around that time he did have a double neck that he was using on stage.
Yeah,
very briefly, and I could see maybe that's that electric 12-string.
See, when I listen to it,
I can hear that.
That is the thin guitar that I was talking about that we used in Dramatic, and you're conflating the fact that we're using that in Dramatic. That's what we use there.
I still think
that's Paul Stanley's jangle tone that can be found throughout his entire catalog on this stuff.
I don't know. I could once he says that, I wonder if he's using an electric 12-string.
Because he was a big, Jimmy Page fan.
I have obsessed over this record.
I might be wrong.
There's only a few records you'll ever hear me get heated about in argument points, and this is one of them.
Just right now, just hearing the overload on the microphones, how you guys are getting excited. I'm like, I don't think
welcome to the Kiss Nerd Podcast.
I don't think we've ever gotten this excited over anything we've talked about.
You're dealing with two guitar nerds battling it out.
To a point where y'all are like, no, God damn it wasn't a 12-string.
Regardless of what was used, I fucking love it.
This
is
great. Inspired by a Raspberry song called Tonight, which has that same kind of descending chord pattern at the front of it.
Yeah.
I'd say it's one of his more clever lifts because listening to that Raspberry song without thinking, Wouldn't You Like to Know Me, I wouldn't have immediately drawn the connection.
That's what makes one of the great strengths of Paul is he's a great stylist. Going back to Move On, being, that being that kind of framework that they used for Good Love and God Bad, and now this being that descending chord pattern like in Tonight. Paul's taking ideas, but he's not stealing them. Does it make sense?
Yeah,
he's working that form, and that's what he does really, really well. It may not be an original idea, but he turns it into an original idea.
That's what all great songwriters do anyway.
Is all great songwriting is, you know, and that's what Paul does really well. That leads into this next one, the Take Me Away Together as One. Very Zeppelin-esque,
very much so.
He's definitely going there.
And even gets a guy that kind of has not a Zeppelin feel, but very advanced and can play a Zeppelin licks that inspired Carmine Appice.
Appice's drumming on here is
who inspired John Bonham.
Fucking killer.
Yes,
especially at the very end with all those breaks,
all those fills and stuff. And that was the reason why he recorded apparently five or six songs that they didn't use because they didn't like that style. He decided that wasn't suiting the songs. I don't know, man. I'm not to knock who. No, wait. Who? Let's go. We didn't even go into the players on this. I know it's
the drummers are all over the place. The only consistent one is Bob Kulick, really.
Well, there's two. Should be two drummers. I think it's Craig Camp. Is that right?
Yep.
Craig. Is it Craig Camp or
Cramp?
Cramp.
Yeah.
So I always found that difficult to say. Craig Cramp.
Cramp.
And then
Richie Fontina
from. When he in Stars too?
Good question. There's no link.
That sounds so familiar though, and I've heard that, but he is right. There's no clickable link on it.
Looking.
But this song it's Zeppelin-esque, but to me, and I love the song, but it doesn't succeed in like, it kind of calls to mind something like the Rain song.
I can hear that, yeah,
but not really. He's going.
Of course, Paul's going
rocking, well, Paul's going for a different atmosphere. It's almost kind of got like a, for lack of a better word, not goth, but gothic.
Yeah, very dark.
Kind of, London After Midnight kind of thing. I can see the mist, when he's got those lines about she wore white and in the, blah, 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 blah.
Yeah.
I will say, I love his chorus on this, super strong. And it's almost a precursor to what we would hear from him on The Elder.
Yeah.
It's because he starts with that loud baritone and then brings it up. And he kind of does that shit on Elder. So I thought that was kind of an interesting little beginning seed work of that.
Yeah, he's really going for epic right here, and it's not quite epic because the production doesn't really match where he's trying to go here.
It's not nearly as big as say we've talked about like on the Ace record. It sounds so big, and
but
on
the
this
song
one
still carries because it's good songwriting, and the performance is really good. When it goes into the chorus, it's got the big powerful guitar that kicks in. So, and it's got the Carmine Appice drum,
Yeah.
Every time
that maybe this is the only track that it really suited itself to, that's why they kept it. It would make sense.
Every time that pre-chorus kicks in with that dun 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 bum, I always want to go like,
yeah. You can hear the audience in the background going.
I also really like the way that it kind of ends out, like the way he goes, like the way he just kind of fades that song out too.
Yeah. It's like a fade without repeating the chorus over and over and over again.
Yes.
It's just playing. It's just there's no turnaround on it. It just glides out into the
killer drumming on top of it.
Glides out into the ether. So we'll lift the needle, we'll flip the record over, and pop the needle down again, and we get It's All Right.
Now, if Take Me Away is a precursor to The Elder, It's All Right, to me, is kind of a precursor to the 80s Paul Stanley Kiss jams.
I don't hear that at all.
Like Crazy Nights a little bit.
What?
I hear a little Crazy Nights, and It's All Right. I love the song.
I never
don't get me wrong.
I hear what you're saying.
I would say Crazy Nights lends more toward the Paul solo record. That would be my take.
It's, when you think about it, it's a straight line, so it doesn't, one feeds the other anyway. I can hear that. I never really thought of that.
Yeah.
But I don't
dislike it or anything, but it's a great song, but it kind of reminds me of that.
To me, like when I hear it, like just that big opening guitar thing, with and even like his vocals through it. To me, it just really reminds me of like the big epic sing-alongs that he was kind of writing, whether it be in the vein of like a Tomorrow and Tonight, just a little bit slowed down, but it's still kind of got that, big hype up kind of vibe to it. I'm never, when I think 80s Paul, I think like Van Halen type shit, and like, that when he's like really trying to follow the trends, it feels like this is still Paul Stanley in his prime and like still becoming like that sassy vocalist, just writing groovy 70s rock. I don't know what you mean by
Van Halen. I don't hear any Van Halen here, but
I don't hear it here. I'm talking about 80s Paul. 80s Paul. That's what I think. Is when he's getting into his Van Halen stuff. I don't hear it at all on this, which is why I'm confusing him. You're confusing me, motherfucker.
I don't think Van Halen had much influence on Paul as much in the 80s as Bon Jovi did, but
it's all the same to me.
We still get those still get those Paul Stanley / Keith Richards chords that he kind of that kind of became his style, that brown sugar riff. You know what I'm talking about?
What I tell you what, I hear the that breakdown part where he goes, "Come over here." I always found that like funny in its own way, but it reminds me in a weird way of like Jailbreak by Thin Lizzy.
I can hear that.
Come here.
Good looking female. Come here.
Get over here.
But I don't think that was intentional. But then again, you never know. Paul being the stylist, you
that's
never
right.
know where he lists his ideas.
That's right.
The vocal on this, I think, is the only vocal that they did that was recorded in England when they mixed it, and it makes me wonder: was there an alternate vocal that he decided to scratch and redo?
That's a good point.
Not sure.
I don't know.
I don't know either.
It's moot probably at this point, but I just think it's curious if that's the only vocal that they recorded in England. Then wonder why.
But no, I love the song. It's in my, despite all of that, it's still in my top 3 on this record.
Yeah, it's all right. That's one I'm surprised that he didn't even pull out for his One Live Kiss tours, like his Paul Stanley solo tour, as he was doing a lot from this record, and this just feels like one that would have fit right in with it.
Well, it follows up with "Hold Me, Touch Me, Think of Me When We're Apart." Whew.
I don't know. I like it.
I was gonna say bring on the hate because I've got some defense. I've got some defense, and I understand the hate.
Well, I'm gonna bring on the hate.
Bring it.
This song is full tilt 70s MOR Drek.
But all right, go ahead.
This sounds like when I was a kid. They used to do these TV shows in the afternoons every once in a while called the ABC After School Special, and this sounds like the theme to an ABC. After School Special. I could hear that playing in the background going, and on a very special ABC After School Special.
No, but
Janie's the babysitter, and she's fallen in love with her best friend's dad.
But when Gene Simmons does,
will she ever, whatever.
But when Gene does, like, say, When You Wish Upon a Star, or like some of the other ballads on his solo record, it kind of contradicts his image,
this
as
is better
the demon.
Than that.
It is, but I think with the Hold Me, Touch Me, it kind of, goes with Paul's image. It makes sense with Paul to me.
I get it. It still sucks.
All right.
I'm just telling you.
I
this
now
is
call
him
Alex
trying.
Stiff to the stand. Captain Nuns kicked off the stand. Here's the defense. So I see what you're saying about it being very pedestrian, very light, very easily consumable. But when I hear it, I hear the lover, flower child, Paul Stanley. To me, this oozes 70s. You listen to this and it's like everything from the production to the way it builds up to his vocal delivery, it sounds like major singer-songwriters of the glorious, beautiful 70s. And that, I think, is where he was trying to reach. Now, we've also discussed on Gene and Peter's records how they had these songs that were like almost there, but the foot wasn't quite on the pedal. I feel that this song is in the same category, whereas if there had been just a little bit more oomph to it, it would have been a little better. But I think this song suffers from the same thing the rest of it does. It's the foot's not quite on the pedal. And that just makes a song that may already be predisposed to not being cared for a little worse.
This does not need a foot on the pedal because it's supposed to be a ballad.
Well, when I say foot on the pedal, I mean a little something more.
I don't know. Maybe if he was more, it's not even that he's not committed to the idea here. I just think that this is just a syrupy, like you said, pedestrian. It's weak songwriting. He's trying for something that's sentimental and again. This is tailored towards a female ear, which is a totally sexist thing to say. But I mean, let's just be honest. What's wrong with being sexy? No, but seriously, and it is. And I didn't write the song, so I'm just telling you. I think that's the gear here, and he's looking for that.
So it's primarily the lyrics that are kind of hitting it.
I think the whole, all of it. It's just the production of it. It's just so mediocre, and it's
just taking him back to a time.
It's not even that it's a ballad. It's just it's just not even. It's nothing. It's just so schmaltzy. It's just so syrupy. It's not even.
It is schmaltzy, but I like 70s schmaltzy though.
I know, but that just
you were there at the time when it was
like this is his yacht rock song.
Yeah, absolutely.
And it's just like.
Well, since we're so close to the end of the record, I feel like this isn't jumping too far. So if you're talking about kind of like sappy delivery, when I hear that, I at least kind of think like the way he's delivering the lines and the lines he's saying.
I guess.
So what's so disconnected from that, between that and "So Goodbye"? It's only for now.
Because that's
and I'm coming back.
Yeah, but
I swear it's somehow that's sappy too, but it's sappy, so great.
But it's got a better. I don't know. It has something to do with the.
It's big guitars on "Goodbye" and stuff.
Oh, I don't know. Well, we'll get to that. But I just as far as it being easily consumable, this is a single off the record, and it didn't do any good. So it was not easily consumable. I don't think it. I think it's because it's just not a very good song, and it's like. For all that Paul does, we just sat there and said, I mean, Paul was a great songwriter, you know? And I think this is just him trying too hard and coming up with, with just sand.
I will say, one of my favorite Paul
he's
harmony
got handfuls
solos.
of something, but it's not nothing you'd want.
I love the outro solo, though.
And that's
all
all
talking
Paul.
about with the wham.
I think that's Paul, too. I think
that's totally Paul.
That's
absolutely Paul.
I think all the guitars, everything on this track is done by Paul.
But that is seriously my favorite.
I'll give you that.
bit.
I think the solo playing on this is actually pretty good.
Yeah.
But this just doesn't seem like this is like a TV movie, background love theme.
I like it.
It doesn't really do anything for me at all. I don't, I think he's written better ballads, much better ballads.
Oh, he definitely has, but I don't know. I don't think there's a bad song on this record. So.
This is awful. But anyways,
I love it.
Awful.
Next up is Love and Chains. I'm not going to take this from them on it anymore. Love and Chains. No, I think this is cool. And I brought this up to Cap, and it's very much like almost like cop drama 70s funk. But at the same time, imagine a metal band playing this song. With like with their kind of style with that with their palm mutes, that kind of thing, like an 80s band. Like,
I think it would have made it worse. It would have made it worse. I think it's fine the way it is.
Well, I'm not. Come on, man! I just said this is a fucking fantastic album. I'm not saying it would be better that way. What I am saying though is the delivery of it though almost feels like the beginnings of that genre. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kinda.
That's more or less where I'm getting, because even like the big walk downs, like the that's all that kind of stuff you would hear from those 80s metal bands, and that's where I'm just like going, the DNA of that feels like it's a little bit in there, but mixed in with funk. It's a funk delivery on almost a metal riff,
and with those big guitars, you can't help but think that it's going to be a heavy metal song to an extent too. And now I'm just picturing those little breaks where he goes, "Love in Chains," and just hearing double kicks.
I was gonna say, well, they do that a little bit. He goes, "Love in Chains,"
it's like a little skip.
Yeah. So there is a little bit of a double kick in that part too. I don't know. I guess I'm fucking crazy.
Kick. That's a stutter
like a skip
or a skip beat.
I've written down that this feels like leftover Kiss, but not in a bad way, and more in just that he had this song and this was the first opportunity he had to use it.
I see that.
Like it's like, okay, I've got this. It was probably written with the intention of going towards Kiss, but now it's here it is. I'm going to do this now. I think it's strong. I like it. I've always liked it.
I think this is a Bob solo.
Yeah, you know, I was wondering about that.
I think this is one of those examples. So, like, I think a bobtail is that fast. Dig it.
Well, I also think his use of a whammy bar, is more.
There's also a guy named Steve Lacy that's credited as playing electric guitar on track 8. Now that could be rhythm guitar. I don't know, but
I don't know what that would be.
But I thought that was interesting, and he doesn't have a link to on his on this page for anything either.
Well, the last song is Goodbye.
Yes.
And allegedly, this was written in an hour. Like, the guy showed up, he had nothing. He said, go away
write a song.
and come back, and I'll have the song ready. And he wrote this like that, allegedly. Given that, it's surprisingly strong if that's true.
Yes. I think
like
it's a good song.
And, you know, those big, fat descending chords are cool. I think they work better here than they do even in, I know you're going to disagree, than it does in Wouldn't You Like to Know Me. Only because here he's not doing the same phrasing as a Raspberry song. And I'm not saying that as an insult at all.
Yeah.
I'm just saying I just think it works better. It's just a cool, you know, it's a cool device used.
I think it's the best closer on all of the all the solo albums.
And the way they kind of wave over on top of each other, you know, in a way. Does it make sense?
A lot of guitar layers on this record.
So I've also I've eventually come around and like with my headcanon and agreed that Goodbye is a good closer for the record. For the longest time though, I always felt like Love in Chains and Goodbye needed to be flipped. Even though Goodbye is like, even title is like, duh, that's going to be the last song. But imagine the last song being Love in Chains. Like the last song just busts in. It's like he would have started on a big note and left on a big note.
Yeah, it's hard for me to see it any other way, only because, again, I've grown up with these records and you know, that's just how it is. You know, I've always liked the song, actually. I always thought it was kind of an underrated song. Even like I said, even though if he's written it in an hour, he's really put together something that's, you know, kind of cool
and it's rocking too.
Yeah,
I like the random breakaway they do too for the I'm on the run.
Yeah, that's a cool spot. And it's like, how do you just come up with that? You know,
and it's one of those. He does a very 70s chord progression move after that part too, where everyone's kind of riding one note on that build up while the guitar's doing the win and win. That's a very 70s move, and I just love that.
So overall, what are your thoughts?
10 out of 10, or 9 out of 9 rather.
If the Ace record has my favorite vibes, you know, sound wise and all that too, the Paul record has my favorite songs.
Interesting. Well, overall, I think this is in many ways Paul's peak moment.
I'd agree.
And it's the songwriting, his vocals are strong throughout. And it's like it's before he had any kind of training or coaching. You can tell there's a point where it's like his vocals change, and I like it better when it's unstudied and untrained. It just sounds more
wild.
Yeah, it just sounds more, you know, ballsy.
And he chose to go to England to mix this record.
But this record still feels rushed and unfinished, which it
in
likely
what way?
is. It just doesn't feel like excuse me, it just doesn't feel like it feels like the production could have been better. It feels like
even though he went out of his way to production wise for this thing.
Well, it's like it seems like he's trying to, whereas if he'd left it a little more raw and worked towards its strength as a raw guitar rock record, but I think he's trying to put some sense. He's got a sheen across that. If he's trying to give this lushness to it.
Yeah,
but he doesn't. And I really think the reason why it feels that way is because it very likely is rushed. Because I think, you know, from what I understand, he would start in one place. I don't like the studio, and they'd start over. I go, you know.
Yeah.
And I think then he had to go back to these quote unquote demos. I'm just speculating. But it feels like the stories that I've put together, he kept going from studio to studio, not liking it, and then by the time, you know, it was getting down to the wire, he had to go back and basically finish out these what were probably demos. I don't know, But that's how I have it in my head, and it feels like that. So now he's trying to polish up these things and kind of gloss them up, and he's doing it himself. And he is not yet probably a proficient, quote unquote, producer.
And see, I don't know. I guess my headcanon is almost like a complete 180 of that.
That said, I think the guitars sound really powerful on this. I think he's got a really great guitar sound, and I think part of what makes this work is that it is so raw.
Yeah.
But it feels like to me, again, it just feels like there's he's trying to do, it's like if I could just get a little more time, I could add this or do that. Nothing's really sweetened up to the point that.
I guess the other part that makes me kind of buck on the whole it being rushed is, out of everyone in the band, he has the longest time in the studios. He spent the most time in different places tracking these songs. I mean, I don't know.
But he doesn't use it. He keeps going back to the stuff he recorded at Electric Lady and the stuff he recorded in L.A. with Jeff Glicksman.
Not all of it, though.
Like half of it. That's what I'm saying, half and half. But
right, but he only went to 2 studios, really.
He ended up going to England.
3.
He mixed it and tried it, but I think he was over there trying to record over there. He just ran out of time.
That's not what I've read.
That's not the narrative I'm really feeling. I feel that he started at one place, he finished at another, and then mixed it in another.
But I just think this feels like an undercooked meal.
So I don't know. To me, this is Thanksgiving dinner for me. It's got everything I want, and even let's talk on production some. I mean, I feel like we all agreed that like Love Gun was a pretty well produced record. Like sonically.
No, I don't like. I
think
it sounds coming, and we talked about this. I don't think it sounds as strong. To me, the best sounding Kiss album is Rock and Roll Over,
and I agree with that too.
See, to me, this shares so much DNA sonically with Love Gun,
and I hear that too.
And the one thing that y'all will never be able to convince me of is that it sounds thin. Both records, to me, those 2 records have a warmth and a body to it that just fill up my headphones. Whereas, Rock and Roll Over punches you, but to me, that record feels thin. You have to find the bass. You have to separate. I mean, you've got Ace and Paul's guitar separated a little bit more, but it's like everything kind of condenses in. With these records, it kind of breathes a little more. You can hear the different guitars going off. You can hear the lushness.
Well, I can hear. I think the guitars have more presence and are more powerful on this than they are on Love Gun.
Okay, that's fine. I mean,
and
that's
to
opinion.
me, I think if you're starting to hear what I think would become a Paul tone for the next couple of records,
I think so,
like before we talked about how none of their 2 records sounded the same. Here, I think you're starting to get more of a. We don't know it yet, but this is the beginning of what would become Paul's pronounced tone for a good while.
I think these tones carry into Dynasty.
Yeah. And
Unmasked.
The peak chart position of this was 40. And that happens on the week of December 16th, 1978.
It's crazy to think he was 3rd.
And he's 3 months after release. So these records did not, and this is with chart manipulation, which Larry Harris from Casablanca, admits they were definitely
payola
doing so I mean, if this is the best they can do, I mean, it's but the thing is like all with these records, we got to give these kind of a quick overview before we cut out here.
R.I.P. phone.
I just throw my shit around. So we've got the 4 solo albums. They're all coordinated to come out at the same day. The covers are coordinated to match in their own way, and then of course they come with the posters that you can interlock if you get all 4. And of course, as always, you've got the order forms to order more swag.
Yes.
All of it, tailored to each individual member according to the record.
One of the coolest pieces that they offered in that was the signature necklaces. I thought that was so cool.
You could, and. I'm surprised you don't see some more of that stuff around. That's the stuff that you seem to see the least of, is that solo album stuff, because they had like belt buckles and everything, just like everything else.
Yep.
But you don't see a lot of that. So this whole concept of the 4 albums, again, had it been a single Kiss album, this would have been so much more successful. Instead, now, you've already got disharmony bred within the group. Now they've gone out to do solo albums, and then, inadvertently, you've now got them competing against each other. Who's going to be more successful? And I don't doubt for a minute that Peter Criss thought this is just going to be my moment.
Oh yeah, he had the biggest single.
He
had the biggest hit.
No,
Ace really did.
Ace did.
Well, I thought you said Peter.
I said Peter Criss.
Yeah,
and Peter didn't do very well.
Well, I still consider Beth to be their biggest hit.
Well, no, I'm talking about from the solos.
Right, but you're saying they were going into it thinking this is going to be my biggest moment, and that's why I was saying Peter was thinking that because he had the biggest hit.
Absolutely. And then Ace turned out to be the big surprise here because he had the most successful. I think Gene's charted highest.
Gene's charted highest, but Gene has said that Ace's record was the better record.
It was the better record, and only because, I think the two, Paul's and Gene's, were the most focused. I mean, Paul's and Ace's, God, were the most focused. They knew exactly what they wanted to do and how to do it. And they worked within what they knew how to do well, whereas Peter and Gene were kind of reaching outside and trying to prove that they could do something else, and with varying degrees of success.
And with Paul and Ace, since they're the two guitar players, they're kind of like the most Kiss sounding because they are the sound of Kiss.
They are the sound, yeah. So that stands to reason. But these albums, they're iconic. They're a landmark, and whether or not they were successful in their time, they've proven to be beyond successful in so many ways that probably you couldn't even measure now.
Yeah.
No one's ever done anything like this. No one probably will never see anything like this again. There's not any band I can think of since Kiss that had that ability to be for individual people to stand on their own merits and do this. Now you could say, well, yeah, but they weren't successful. But like in the long run, again, it was successful, like I said, in the long run.
As Kiss, and not just as
Kiss. It is.
Yeah.
But
and not
I'm just saying, this
careers.
established also, like you said, you noted, this is the first time you see the coloring, the red, green,
purple,
blue. Purple and blue. You get it really sets out the idea of individual members and gives them more identity at a point when there was still a lot of mystery about who these guys were, and by design. And plus the fact that there was no social media or anything like this to go and, so this was really a special era. And, now they're going to kind of, they're starting to make that transition we've already talked about, where they're kind of really steering in towards a youth preteen market, which of course we're going to see on our next episode, where we're going to talk about probably the most,
the biggest blunder.
Maybe the biggest blunder of the career of Kiss.
As much as I love this movie, I cannot disagree.
I don't know that, all Kiss fans love this movie.
But it is a huge
some
blunder.
people love it because it is so not
Silly.
good.
Yes, it's so bad.
But we'll
so
talk
good.
about this at great length, because the next episode should be a fun one as we explore Kiss meets the Phantom of the Park.
The 1978 series continues.
So we hope you have enjoyed our look at the solo albums, and we hope you'll join us again next time on No Time to Turn.
Thank you for listening. Please insert another coin by supporting the show for as little as $1 a month at patreon.com/somethinggoodnetwork.